Well, another beautiful start to this Thursday morning, 17th day of September. Joining us this morning, Isaiah Dunham joins us. He is a councilman from Oil City. Good morning, Isaiah. How are you?
Morning. Good. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
Before we get into the local politics, because there's so much going on, let's learn a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Pennsylvania resident. I was born and raised in Shippensville, Pennsylvania. Moved to Wyoming shortly after school. I pursued a career in technology and kind of grasped it, loved it. Things didn't work out the way I wanted it to out there, so I moved here, became a resident of Oil City, pursuing my own consulting business, doing computer repair, and realized that there was lots going on in the city that really needed some attention. So while still doing the consulting business, decided to run for city council and pursue city government to see if I can and hopefully be able to make some changes inside the city to bring the city up to the next level.
You know, everybody runs and they think, "Oh boy, I'm going to get in and I'm going to do some great things. I'm going to, change the way things are done." Did you find that it was easier said than done?
Extremely. I consider myself more of a mover and a shaker, and then I come into city government or any government in general and realize that I can move but nothing shakes. And so we move at a pace that the city works at, which is the city speed. Unfortunately, not as fast as I would like to see things move, especially whenever we're talking about the city of Oil City. So
if you could go back to candidate Dunham at the time, what would you say to him? What advice would you have for him?
Be prepared. It's a trial the whole way through. There's a lot more involved than just sitting at a table voting yes or no. Not only are you a piece of the public's eye, which is very crucial and a very good thing, but there's also a financial aspect involved that it's very, very hard to get your mind completely grasped or your hands grasped on. There's money coming in, money going out, and where does it all go? Where does it all come from? You're dealing with a bigger budget than you've ever had to deal with, and it's difficult.
But I'm sure it's also challenging, and in that regard, I'm sure somebody like you doesn't mind, getting their hands dirty and getting in there and saying, okay, how do we improve this item, or how do we make Oil City a better place to live, work, and play?
I don't mind the challenge at all. The challenge is invigorating. It's fun. It's sometimes enlightening and a lot of times very frustrating. But getting involved with it is great on a completely civic aspect, because you're making a change. You're looking at the city as a whole and saying, what can I do? We as council, me especially too, we're not looking at it as we're council, we're trying to run the city. We're residents of the city, and we're trying to make a difference for the city in any fashion that we can, and especially on the financial level. Anytime that we have to do anything with taxes, water and sewer funds, that affects us directly as well. So not only do we have the concern of the city, but we have the concern of the residents as well, because we are a resident and we fall under the same guidelines that they do.
So if something is important to you, more than likely, then it's probably pretty important to a lot of other people too.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of our rules as city council is we're supposed to be listening to our constituents and saying, and hearing what they need, what they want to see, what they want to do, and putting that into a realistic fashion. And at the same time, we also have to realize that in a very roundabout way, we are our own constituents. Our house is there, our family's there, our jobs are there. So not only does what does my neighbor want, what do we want, and what does the city need as a whole to continue to move forward?
Mark and I are always talking about doing more with less. As wintertime approaches and the streets get filled with snow and removal gets a little slower because you don't have that budgeted. It's got to be again challenging to be looking at that, saying, all right, how do we do more or the same or maintain with less?
A lot of people have said this, and I'll repeat this. We as council, we're a thankless position. So last winter was an especially brutal winter, and so we tried to do as much as we could to keep the streets cleaned, not only with the snow, but when spring came by, also deal with grit removal. And the unfortunate thing is no one was really ever happy. There was some people that were very happy. There were some people that weren't very happy, and we tried to make the mass happy as much as we can, while at the same time protecting the city. So there's a lot of times that you go out of your house and you're not sure if you're going to be ducking and weaving from the bullet fire, or or being thanked for keeping their streets clean. It's a toss-up whether or what's going to happen with the public.
I imagine, though, as you get into the job, you sort of develop a thicker hide for some things like that too.
You almost have to. You can't be offended by some of the naysayers. Now we're fortunate, like I said, we do have some naysayers, but we're very fortunate that we can at least sit down and talk to them.
Well, and we don't let Mark attend the meetings anymore, so you shouldn't have that.
And we thank you for that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
But we do grow a thicker hide. We still try to listen to the naysayers. We always listen to the naysayers. We don't try to turn anyone down. But sometimes we have to sit ourselves in a realistic position and say we just can't do that, or we don't have the funds to do that.
So you're a young guy. How do you get young people to step up and run for these positions? So many times we get into the election cycle and somebody's run unopposed, or there's nobody running for a position. How do you get young people, or how do you get anybody to run? Especially, as you say, sometimes these positions you're under a microscope.
It's a tough and frustrating situation. A lot of what I think needs to happen in order to better this role is education. To a lot of people, city government is not an important position. They'd rather look at the more federal levels, or even the state levels, the governor, the president, federal representatives, federal senators, and they think that's important to us. Really, what the reality here is the city's, if anything, one of the most important things that the residents need to look at, because we deal with everything, our taxes, our roads, and everything, and a lot of people don't realize that. So I think one of the first steps to get a younger crew involved is education. Now, if you ask me how to do the education, I don't really know that. There's a lot of very passionate younger individuals out there. It's just getting them to take that step forward. It's a scary situation. It's a scary step. But that needs to happen in order to move everything forward, especially the city of Oil City.
How much of it is that media attention and not wanting to put yourself or your family, into the story?
Surprisingly, not too much. We've been very fortunate now. We do have the Derek. The Derek does attend to everything, and that sometimes is a good thing, sometimes is a bad thing, as with all media. And I'm not going to pinpoint just directly on the Derek, but the media attention isn't too awfully bad. There is a lot of individuals out there that follow everything very closely with the city and say, I have a problem with this, and for whatever reason they have a problem with it, and that's really the biggest part that we get compliments or naysayers with.
Do you tend to focus on what's going on right in Oil City, or do you take a look at what's going on in other communities? Because for example, you guys are tackling parking garage. Meadville's tackling parking garage. You'll hear about blight. Titusville talks about blight. Meadville talks about blight. You guys are talking about blight. Do you ever pick up the phone and call another community and say, "What are you guys doing here?"
I try to. Some of our councilmen are very hands-on with what's going on inside the city. I like to try to look at the other municipalities and say, what are you doing? And it's beneficial to us because people have A, made this work, B, it hasn't worked. And so we need to look at what hasn't worked and say, how can we make it work? And even on top of that, and let's not look at the negative sides of the city, but even the positive sides of the city. I like to keep a close relationship with not only Corn Planter, Cranberry, Franklin, Rouseville, all of those, because their economic development directly affects our economic development, and likewise, our economic development directly affects their economic development. And so we have to be we have to create, and I'm going to use the word alliance, and maybe it's not the correct word, but we have to create an alliance between all the municipalities to grow as a whole. We're not individual entities inside the state. We directly affect each other.
How do you engage these other communities, though? How do you get them into the conversation?
So, fortunately, the state, there's a state organization called the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and they...
Oh, and that movie's coming out. They're going to battle Superman.
Yes.
Okay. I'm with you.
They're all the third-class cities and up, and some boroughs as well. They get together sporadically throughout the year. Well, it's not sporadically. I mean, there's organized meetings. Get together, we talk, we say, here's the issues of our city, here's the issues of our municipality, here's what the state's doing. They're kind of the liaison between all of the municipalities and the state, but at the same time, we get to focus on the municipalities at the same time. And then also on a local level, there is the COG, the Council of Governments, and most of the small municipalities in Venango County, or a good portion of them, are in attendance of that. So, it's an opportunity for us to sit down and say, hey, how's things going? Even up to French Creek, Utica, Emlenton, all of these guys we get to sit down and say, this is what's going on.
I think just if looking at it as a whole, if you go back 30, 40 years, Franklin, they were firing on all cylinders with industry. Oil City firing on all cylinders with industry. Titusville same, Meadville the same. So I think it was very easy to get caught up into, we can just do things ourselves in the community. Well, as those industries go away, you're sort of left with, okay, how do we do this, or how do we do that? It's not to take away from the talented individuals in each municipality, but it's almost as if, okay, maybe we should look at picking up the phone and contacting somebody to say, hey, how are you doing this, or how would you approach this?
Well, we're in a very unique time where, and especially Oil City, that we really need to reinvent ourselves. We really need to recreate ourselves and make a new municipality. It's not the same old Oil City. Mm-hmm. I encourage all the other municipalities to do that, and I've encouraged them before. We're not the oil boom city that we once were. We've unfortunately lost that industry. So the question now is where do we go next? And at this point,
do you have thoughts on that as a councilman? When you ran for this position, did you think, okay, this is where I would like to see Oil City?
Sure. I mean, one of the biggest things that builds a city is tourism in general. Now, how do you bring people in? Now, we've started with the bike trail, and that's brought in some people, but some events that I think need to be better focused on are like Oil Heritage, Apple Fest. Those events, the tourism, it brings people in. You take a look at, I'm going to use Clarion as an example. You take a look at Autumn Leaf Festival. And Autumn Leaf Festival is an event that's built for the last 60 years, even longer. And you see people coming in from Texas, from North Carolina, from South Carolina. It's a tourist event. We need to bring that in. And at the same time, whenever we bring the tourism in, we also need to bring the business in at the same time. And we don't need to bring in the Quakers. We don't need to necessarily bring in a 400 or 500 employee business. We need the mom and pop shops. We need the 1 and 2 employees, because that's what drives our economy. That's what builds our economy. And we need to be more friendly to them at the same time. So not only tourism, but we need an economic development drive, a business drive, to bring people into the city to say, you know what, this place is a great place. And we're missing that. And Franklin's a little bit better on that. They've handled more of the mom and pop shops a little bit better than what Oil City has. Cranberry's dealt with more of the 300-400 employee businesses. You got Walmart up there, Home Depot, Shockey, the list goes on. So, we need to start looking at the mom and pops and say, this is what we need. And then we also need to drive tourism to a better point in the city.
Mark, you've been covering Oil City for a number of years. It's got to excite you, and you live in Oil City, so it has to excite you that you've got somebody who is excited about making a change, or just has a positive view on being a member.
It's very pleasing, actually. I moved back to Oil City in 2004. and actually took up residence there a short time later, and have been covering Oil City affairs off and on for a number of years.
Well, in fairness, the work release program puts you there.
This is true.
So.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's been interesting and edifying to see how one of the things that really pleases me about Oil City is when there's an opportunity to excel, people seem to latch onto that. One of the things that really has propelled the city, I think, well, are the neighborhood organizations, and you've made quite an effort to get in touch with these folks throughout the years. I think it's been shown on and off throughout the last 10 or 12 years or so, when people really feel like there's something that needs to be taken care of, they reach out not only to local government, state government, and all of that, but they band together. And that's got to be a good thing for you as a council person, too.
We, inside the city, we have a very unique crew of people. If we need help, the residents always help. That's been tried and true throughout my tenure as city council. Two of the great examples I can show is the fountain that we put up on the East End. That was phenomenal. The amount of public support that we got from that.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the city didn't have to pay a single dime for that. That was all by volunteer donations, organizations. I serve on the board for Aubrey's Adventure, who spearheaded the fountain, and it was a great group of people, and we worked really hard to get where we're at. And then the other one as well is the town square where the previous Brody block was. Right. I mean, that was all those were all donations, volunteer work. That cost the city very, very little money. Now the city did have to front some money for the demolition of the building, but if the city needs something and the people feel passionate enough about it, it's going to happen. It may not happen as quick as some people would like it, but we're very fortunate that those individuals are there to help us and to move us forward into the next step.
There are a number of terrific things that have happened over the years. One of the things that has sustained itself over time seems to be the Main Street program, and it seems to have propelled the city by leaps and bounds, making improvements here and there throughout the city.
That's again, we go back to I'm a little bit more of a mover and a shaker than some people. I think the Main Street's doing a great job. They have they're focusing more on the businesses, and they're also focusing on more of the facade of the businesses, because that's very important. The curb appeal. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, there's some things that could move a little bit faster, but I'm not going to discredit the Main Street at all, because they're completely overwhelmed with everything that's going on. But they are bringing a unity to some of the businesses and to the downtown Oil City as a whole, and that's very important to the city.
There's always been a push and pull that I've seen over as long as I've covered Oil City, a push and pull between the folks who, as you mentioned, will tell you that the curb appeal is really important. You have to have a city that looks good for people to come in and feel invited and welcome and warm, and I guess the appeal is that it's a nice place to be, but what is the what's the payoff for that? So we get people to come and get a warm fuzzy. How do you convert that into something that's substantive?
Well, I think there's a couple sides to that too. By just bringing individuals in to be more of a volunteer, be more of a resident, a civic-minded individual is very important. And as Oil City's shown, that if we have the people there, they tend to help. But one of the things that I think should be more focused on, and whether it's the city that should take place in this Main Street or the Chamber, is more of a small business initiative. There's a lot of people out there that are very entrepreneurially minded, and it's just convincing them or overtaking the fear that this isn't a bad thing to do.
Isaiah, will you come back and join us again?
Absolutely.
We'd love to continue this conversation. We got to get to news. It's the top of the hour. Thank you so much for joining us,
you.
Isaiah Dunham, Oil City Councilman. Thank you so much. News is next with Mark and Andy. This is the Morning Drill.
Walking on sunshine.